I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK. Of course I do. And I think that it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, my children my homeland. And I think what really worries me more than anything else about today's decision, depending on, what happens next, is that it's set a new precedent, that security can be used to control members of the family. And effectively what it does is imprison other members of the family from being able to, choose a different life. If for me, security is conditional on having an official role, one that both myself and my wife wished to carry on, but then was rejected, not by Ravek, was rejected by the royal household. And the result to that is you lose your security. That basically says that you can't live outside of their control, if you want to be safe.
Do you want the court battle to continue? Do you want to try to see this get to the Supreme Court?
I don't want any battles to continue. There is way too much suffering and way too much conflict in the world. At the heart of it is a family dispute. And it makes me really, really sad that we're sitting here today, 5 years later, where a decision that was made, most likely, in fact, I know, to keep us under the roof. But then once they realized that wasn't going to work, once they realized that, myself, my wife, and our kids are happier outside of the institution, then please just look at the facts. Look at the risks, look at the threat, look at the impact that if anything was to happen to me, my wife, or my father's grandchildren, if anything was to happen to them, look where the responsibility lies. So, there's a duty of care that has been completely thrown out the window. And that doesn't feel great. So for me, having an official role was conditional on keeping security. But for everybody else, people who have chosen this life to enter into public office and then leave, get it for life, regardless of whether they have risk or threat to their name. And by the way, I agree with that. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. That if you come in and you serve your country, even if it's a minimum of 4 years, that you get the protection that you require because of your public service. I was born into this position. It wasn't a choice. I've served my country for 35 years. I believe that I am still continuing to serve my country. Public service is my life. That is the dedication that will never change. And then all the other bits and pieces that are added to that. There are very, very real threats that exist out there. Some that are known about, some that are being withheld. And for people in power and responsibility of decisions to know that those threats and risks exist, but to turn around and say, well, because you don't have an official role, your life doesn't actually matter anymore. Well, you can imagine how I feel about that, but you can also imagine, not even imagine, that is the most illogical argument in the history of arguments. At this point, I'm feeling very let down. It's the minority of people, especially those that read the tabloids and the press themselves. The press themselves have incited so much hatred towards myself, my wife, and even our children, that's hard to forgive. I actually couldn't believe it. I thought with all the disagreements and all of the chaos that's happening, the one thing that I could rely on is my family keeping me safe. And not only did they decide to remove my security in the UK, but they also signaled to every single government around the world not to protect us. I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile. As I learned through the First Nations throughout Canada, because of the Invictus Games, their goal in life was always truth and reconciliation. And I turned around to them in many conversations, I said, right, but reconciliation can't come without truth. Well, I've now found out the truth. I've shared some of it with you today. A lot of it exists out there, whether people choose to ignore it or not. You know, so it would be nice to have that reconciliation part now. If they don't want that, that's entirely up to them.